Very nice. So good to be back here with you, live streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube. My name is Carlos Hoyos. I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm so happy to be here, especially because we have an international presence, somebody that's changing the way people interact in their work environment through collaboration, specifically with Gen Z. It's a person that I had the privilege to know in one of the webinars of International Coaching Week through BTS, a place that we got to know each other. So we arranged this, and you are going for a real treat. So if you're just coming to this podcast live on audio and you don't know who I am, well, I'm here. I'm just the host, but I also work as coaching, as executive coach, and I do business advisory. But here, I'm not a star of the show. Here, I'm just the person that brings the best people that I can find on the planet to talk about their subject matters, right? So without further ado, Anna, so glad, so happy that you are here, that you can bring this knowledge and information for us. And I've been with in some forums, and this information that you bring about generations is so important, so hot, and I'm so blessed that I found you. And so be welcome, right? And as we used to say here in the podcast, who's Anna Hislop by Anna herself. It's with you, my friend.
Thank you, Carlos, for having me here. I am delighted to spend this time with you and with your listeners as well. Hello, everybody. So my name is Anna Hislop, as Carlos just said, and I am a Swede who made the big leap across the North Sea 4 years ago to come and live, work and experience the UK, organizations and leadership. And it's been absolutely fascinating. I spend my days doing leadership training, one-to-one coaching, and I'm also pursuing a master's in business psychology and organizational psychology. So that is keeping me busy, certainly, and it's keeping me out of trouble. So that's good. So yeah, thank you for having me here today and for your willingness to discuss Gen Z and how they are creating some really big waves in the workplace of today.
That's excellent. I'm really happy for this. And if you're the listening or seeing us here, you notice that Anna has a book, and I had the privilege to have access to this book. Uh, and I'm really delighted. This book is called You Only Have to Ask. And it's so brilliant because it has nice chapters about very important matters regarding relationships and communication. And also, by the way, I realized that a lot of the tools and the systems that you present us that in the book, they're useful across all kind of intergenerational relationships. So these are really helpful. So you're that watching and listening to us, take a look, grab your copy of your book as soon as you can, because it's really helpful. This is like the tip of the iceberg that we can do here live for you, right? So
yeah, thank you, Carlos, for bringing that up. I'm still getting used to the role of an author, actually,
yes.
and it's not on the tip of my tongue just yet. But yes, I am releasing a book on the 22nd of July, so very soon it will be available on the big online book sites and also in local bookstores around the world. And it's called You Only Have to Ask How to Realize the Full Potential of Gen Z at Work. And the word realize actually have two different meanings. And I'd like to, if you don't mind, Carlos, just talk to that a little bit. First of all, it means that senior leadership and managers have to realize that Gen Z has something really important to offer. And then the second part of the word realize, it's all about how to make it happen, how to help them do their best work at work.
Excellent. Very, very nice. That is a word that has even influenced the Portuguese speaking language, because we get the meaning of realization and get these multiple exceptions because we hear a lot from English. So that's one of the intermix of the language that I really loved about it. But before we get into more details about the book and the work that you do and how we can collaborate better with this very fascinating generation, how you got to work with Gen Z, and like, how you end up here, because you're doing a very nice work on this area, but how did it start?
Yeah, great question, and I'd love to share that story with you. But first of all, I just want to give you some framework. So for you who are new to Gen Z and the concept of Gen Z, it's a generation born between 1995 and 2010. And next year, they will make up 30% of the global workforce, which is a big number. And they, as I mentioned at the start, they're creating some waves in the workplace. They make up about a quarter of the world's population today, so around 2.4 billion people, which is, again, it's a great number. But of course, as always, when we talk about generations, it's easy to fall into the trap of stereotypical behaviors and characteristics. And I just want to start off with a note of caution here, that what I'm going to be sharing today is obviously not the characteristics of every single Gen Z individual, but it's painting a picture, and the picture is based on statistics, and it's based on some global events that were happening during their formative years. So this picture is important, but it's not the absolute truth. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Good advice.
Yeah, and I think, of course, as we know as coaches and as we know as leaders as well, there's so much that make up the identity of our personality and of who we are. It's our individual experience. It is the belief system that we carry. It is the education that we've had, and it's the culture that we grow up in. So of course, that influences how we show up as well.
Nice.
But I first got so just to answer that question, Carlos,
sure.
of how I got introduced to Gen Z, I'd like to take you back to 2010, because that was the first time that I met this generation. And I was working as a teacher in the Swedish school system. I had been a teacher for about 7 years before I met Gen Z. And as soon as they walked in my classroom, I noticed that they were different. It was something about this generation that was new to me. And they had a very different way of voicing their opinion, of sharing their thoughts and their critique. And they made it really clear. They wanted to be involved. They wanted to be a part of the creation in the classroom, and they wanted to have their opinions listened to. And if I didn't, it was an instant lack of motivation, lack of energy, lack of passion and focus in the classroom. But as soon as I got them involved, as soon as I co-created together with them, magic happened. So that was my first kind of introduction to Gen Z. And they had a very different approach to asking for what they needed. And their kind of heightened awareness around mental health, I think, helped this situation. So they knew that they needed support, or when they needed support, and they knew that they could ask for it. And of course, sometimes this also meant that they used mental health as an excuse to get out of tricky, sticky, uncomfortable situations. And that was also noticeable. But at least they had a language around it, and they asked for what they needed.
This reminds me of something that I thought the moment that you start talking about this, that said 2010, when you start talking to them, immediately realized something changed. And I used to do lots of presentations to universities about coaching, self-development, self-leadership, and all that stuff. And I don't remember the year exactly when was this change. I mean, I had a way of interacting with them, and they're like in college, right? College, not necessarily close to graduation, but like middle time in the college, like second, third year. And I realized that 1 year, the whole thing changed. Whatever I was doing before, it was not working, was not, connecting to them anymore. So I really have to change everything, the way I have to reinvent myself in presenting, to connecting to these youngsters. And now that you mentioned that, you say, ha, that's exactly what happened. But I didn't I was not
You weren't
present with
aware of
that
it.
at that time, right? So this is so nice. Thank you so much, because that's gives me the clarity and say, oh, that's what happened, and I have
Yeah.
to work my way through this. It's
Mm.
interesting. Now,
Yeah.
whenever we're talking about generations, uh, there's the whole context and culture and upbringing and what's
Mm.
going on in the world, technology. So when we think about Gen Z, what are the main things that are different for them when they grew up? I mean, what shaped Gen Z?
Mm. Mm.
No, does
Yeah.
that make sense? Is a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Okay.
100%. And this is not about, comparing necessarily with
Yeah.
other
Absolutely.
generations. And it's not about telling that one generation had a worse time compared to the next one. It's just about sharing what was going on at this time. And it was certainly shaping this generation. So it's a very important question to ask. And when Gen Z grew up, they grew up in a time that was kind of influenced by uncertainty in many different ways. And first of all, it was the economic uncertainty with the Great Recession that was happening. And for them, this didn't mean that they lost their job, of course, but it meant that they grew up in households and families where family members, maybe parents or siblings, lost their jobs. And as a child, that can be a very different experience compared to as an adult. So they grew up during this economic instability. The housing market collapsed, the banking system collapsed, and they were surrounded with people who were talking about them just being a number in their workplace. They talked about not trusting their employers. They talked about having made significant sacrifices to the detriment of their mental health and health in general. And they were thanked by being laid off or losing their job. So this was the kind of attitude that people were sharing in the households. And as kids, this made a significant impact. The other thing that was happening during this time was the growing concerns about the climate change, of course. And this was very much a part of their education and all of the classes that they were teaching or being taught. The other focus that was going on at this time were the social justice movements around the world. So, just to name a few examples, the Arabic Spring, the Black Lives Matter, the Me Too campaigns, and again the climate change movements. So all these movements were happening, and people were raising their voices and demanding a more fair and just and equal society. And that also shaped this generation very much. It also shaped the way that they saw the establishment, politicians,
Yeah.
governments, the police force, all of these institutions in our societies were being really challenged at this time. So that also shaped their experience during these years. And of course, the education system is the other big change compared to other generations. So this is the time when teachers were being trained in how to teach children with different diagnoses and to make individual adjustments, learning needs-based adjustments, and also asking for their opinions and their feedback. And they were filling out surveys of what they thought about education and all sorts of things. So this is a time when they really learned how to express their needs and ask for help, and they got it. So that was very formative for them as well. So individual performance plans, developmental feedback. They got used to course corrections, teachers supporting them, motivating them, helping them along the way, and they're wanting this in the workplace as well, but they're not getting it.
It's really fascinating. And of course, it not only happens for them, but happens to everybody, the whole pandemic thing. But
Yeah,
we
of
hit
course.
them hard because of their age at that time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that was significant during this time was was the kind of the individualistic society that was shaped as well during their education. It was very competitive, and it was all down to what I need and the support that I need to be successful at school. And that also shaped them, and they bring that to the workplace as well. And that can sometimes put a lot of pressure on an individual to constantly compete with others and to have that kind of need to be successful. And of course, this is also highlighted and brought to a peak with social media.
Yes, because they're really engaged on this. This is my mind starts with so many questions now after hearing you. Even though I had already read, process, and learned a lot with your book, just like having this live conversation, just like bubbles up many things. I know you covered this before in the webinar I watched and on the text, but I want to review this concepts, and also for benefit of everybody that's listening, watching us now, and on the replay. Like, what are the key strengths that this generation have? Because the way people react, they tend to react in a very negative way, and they say, "Oh, this new generation, yada 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 yada," right? But there's so many good qualities and so many different things, right? And when you start to talking to them, and you're just really open, lower your defenses, turn off your criticism, there's so much that we can learn from them. From your experiences, what are the key qualities, skills, advantages that they have, so to speak, in comparison with other generations? Again, not because one is best and the other is worse. It's just like they're different, but in these differences, there are advantages, right? There are benefits. So could you elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're pointing to some of these strengths is around the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and creating that sense of belonging and wanting to be a part of something big, wanting to be a part of a company's mission, and really understand how they fit into that bigger picture, and what about them makes them the right person to do this job, and really wanting to connect with that sense of purpose. That's a huge strength of theirs, because all of their energy and their passion thrives in that space. The other thing, which is a strength, I think, is the critical thinking, the speed of how they work, but also the openness to new ideas and to challenging the status quo, to not just do things because it's the way that they've been done before, but to come up with new ideas and innovations. So that's a big strength. And of course, their technical skills and how advanced they are with the tech helps them to come up with new ideas and to think fresh thoughts. The other thing that I consider to be a real strength is their desire to learn new things, to always develop and grow and progress. There's a massive hunger for this. And in today's fast changing, fast moving world, we need that. And sometimes bureaucracy and kind of a slowness to certain industries and businesses, that is a problem. So I think Gen Z brings this new, fresh perspective to it.
Yeah, this resonates a lot with so many things that I see at my home. I have a Gen Z daughter.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing the amount of different subjects that she's aware of, and she goes deep on it. Yeah. And I remember the person that taught me what hashtag meant was her.
Yeah.
And I say, you got to do hashtag. I think, I don't know, 7, 8 years of time. And she had like Facebook pages. I didn't know that you could even have that. I mean, I knew it was her, but I never imagined that like a kid would do that. And Dad, you got to use the hashtag. I said, what is that? Yeah. So it's just like one example. I don't want to talk too much about this, but it's just like amazing. See, how did you know that? It's just like amazing. So because
and I think we can learn a lot.
Yeah. learn a lot, and they definitely challenge the status quo.
Mm,
Parents know. So, and this is
for
such
sure.
a, at least for me, it's a growth opportunity to get into their environment, their context of the space, and to understand how they think.
Mm,
And since we're already talking about this, um, how we close this gap. I
mm,
think the work environment, like the main topic for us, how we can thrive with Gen Z
mm.
in this. I mean, like you said, it's going to be a third of the population. Eventually, it's going to be like 50%. I know this, right? It's
Yeah,
just like time. We're getting older. People die, so they are dominating the work environment. Eventually, they're
yeah.
like a huge part of them. So, how we close the gap
Mm,
to create a very collaborative environment and
mm.
a workforce that's integrated in this multi generational environment.
Mm. I think we need to accept the fact that they are changing the workplaces around the world.
That's
And
a
we
good
need
start,
to,
huh?
yeah, that is a good start. And not to resist it necessarily, but become a part of that change, and support them with experience, and expertise that the more senior people in the workplace have, obviously based on their experience, and walk together with them. So communication is key, and a willingness to understand this generation, a willingness to appreciate this generation. And that's when we start to talk about generational intelligence. That is when we appreciate what every generation brings to the table. And when we understand that we all have different perceptions, different values, different beliefs, and different skills, and we start to work together rather than trying to prove our own point, or pointing fingers or blaming others. So I always advocate for communication and understanding, and being willing to take that step yourself, and not just wait for them to change.
Excellent.
Mm.
And we got a nice question from the audience here. João Luis Pascal, thanks much, João. João has already been in the podcast. Interviewed him recently. He's also international coach. He has a very strong presence in the ICF organization as well.
Mm.
And his question is, I would love to hear Anna's opinion. What are the most effective strategies for engaging and retaining Generation Z employees in the workplace, considering their unique values and expectations? And I think this is
Mm.
like nice lead away from what you just said, just like how we moving from them, engaging and retaining them.
Yeah, brilliant segue there. Thanks for that. So what we're noticing and what the statistics are telling us, and when I say statistics, I mainly use Gallup, and Deloitte. The Gen Z and Millennial annual survey, for example, Randstad
Yep.
is also other survey companies that I've been looking at. They tell a story, and they paint a picture of what Gen Z is looking for in the workplace. And I will be giving some numbers here, so grab your pen and paper to make sure you take some notes. But 50% of Gen Z, they are willing to leave their job if they don't find it fulfilling. And with fulfilling, they talk about opportunities to learn and grow. So development, personal development and career development, and a connection to the meaningfulness, that it's a mission that they believe in. And that is really important for Gen Z. So how often do we talk about our mission as a business? In our meetings, we might talk about it annually in the conference, when we share our new mission statement. How often do we integrate it in our day-to-day to remind ourselves that this is why we exist, this is why our work is important, and this is what we want to achieve? Gen Z, they love that, and particularly if they are on board with it and if it aligns with their own mission and purpose, that's when we get the most engagement from this generation. The other thing is around the work-life balance. And I know that this is a buzzword that everybody is talking about. We need well-being and work-life balance. But for Gen Z, it means quite a few different things. So 46% of Gen Z today feels stressed out, anxious, or burnt out on a daily basis. And that is a high number considering they've only been at work for up to 5 years or something like that. So it's early to start feeling these feelings. And it's due to the high intensity and demands. It's due to the work environment sometimes and where they operate. The quality of the manager is massively important to Gen Z. And they rate, so the leadership qualities that Gen Z are looking for is a caring leader, a leader that offers support, and a leader that trusts you. So those are the top 3 leadership characteristics that Gen Z rate the highest. And that is quite different from what we're used to. And that takes a bit of effort to start to cultivate those characteristics. So if you do, then you will have engagement and you will have productivity from Gen Z. The other thing is the constant connectivity. That's a challenge for Gen Z. And sometimes they're self-inflicting this pain on themselves, because I read somewhere that Gen Z generally spend 5 hours per day on social media. So that is a challenge, so helping them to step away from social media from time to time. But just to get back to the original question, which was actually around how to support this generation to be fully engaged, it's about asking the questions that I ask in my book, or the book that I co-authored with Peter Lightfoot. It's knowing expectations. That's really important to Gen Z. If they don't know what's expected of them, then they will feel very lost, and they will procrastinate, and they will not get the work done unless they know exactly what they need to do, and divide it up into bite-sized chunks. Understanding why it's expected, which is the purpose and the big picture that I mentioned earlier, and aligning that to their own mission and what they want to do with their life. The care, who cares about me? Am I just a number or not? Is important to them when it comes to engagement. And then the other 2 things are crucial, and that is, can I do what's expected of me? And do I have the confidence to do what's expected of me? So supporting your Gen Z team member with training, support, helping them challenge themselves in a healthy way to take them out of their comfort zone and into their learning zone, but not into panic zone, because if they're in the panic zone, they won't do any good at all to themselves or to the business. But supporting them to do a healthy stretch into their learning zone. And also challenging some of their limiting beliefs that they might have, that they need to be in a certain way to be successful, to help them with that.
Very, very nice. Now, one thing it got me thinking while I was processing this, they found purpose really important, right? And I mean, I work with businesses and governance, and you gotta have purpose so things make sense. And other generations saw purpose in a different way. If you talk about baby boomers, their purpose is like survive after all those hard years as well. So they have different generations have different purposes, right? I have to grow in my career, whatever. Different generations, different purposes. So when you think about purpose, or perhaps even expanding this, what are the other generations that tend to work well with Gen Z? And the reason I'm asking this is that very soon, in a few years, we're going to have Generation Alpha starting to work as well, right? And then we're going to have like 6, 7 different, and people keep on leaving more. I mean, last week, I was interviewing Fernando Poch, and he's the guy with Senior Tax Ventures. So he's working with 50 plus, 60 plus, and all that stuff. So it was a really nice contrast. So people are still engaged, and they are going to leave more, and they're going to be even more engaged. So what I'm trying to figure out is, it's like a good pairing between 2 or 3 generations that it's just like they work nicely together, even though they are different.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. And I would say that, millennials and Gen Z, so millennials are the generation above Gen Z,
Yeah.
19, 89, whatever, to, and they share a lot of Gen Z's desires. They share
Okay.
the need for a mission. They share the need for a purpose. They share the need for a work-life balance. But that's also because they're moving into parenthood at the moment, raising young children, and recognizing that is another dimension to life and to work, and trying to make that puzzle work.
Yeah.
But they're not willing to step away from a job if they don't fulfill these needs, because they have the financial obligations and need for stability for their young families. So they can understand Gen Z, but they're not necessarily as brave as Gen Z to do something about the stuff that they feel is challenging them. But there's a level of understanding, at least. But I think generally it's about the willingness to understand and be curious about different generations. That will be the success factor here, not the age that you have, but being willing to learn, being willing to being open and appreciate the different things that different generations bring. That's the success formula, I think, not necessarily your age.
Nice. I really like how you contrast this. They relate, but they are not going to go to streams, right? Because they have different environments and financial needs. So this makes a lot of sense. Now, you're a coach as well, and whenever we approach this is like something that I think a lot about this, um, because we really need to understand how in general people work and they think, and their value systems and their belief systems, right? And you just said quite well, and there's also in your book and the webinar that I watched you the first time, it was also saying just careful, don't create generalizations or make generalizations. But when you get the approach, it's like a checklist or a quick way of identify, or this is just like a typical Gen Z, if there is such a thing as like that. So in other words, what questions that you would ask, or what other approaches you have to identify if this person is like, apart from age, right? Because the age when people are the like the frontier layer, that's pretty much what happens. But that not only the experience that I have. I had some people that had the age to be really like quite in the format, but it's really in a different way. So how you identify that, and how you typically work this in the work environment to make sure we don't misjudge generations or people, or put them in a box. You know what I mean? I'm not sure this was a clear question for you. Did it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And what comes to me at the moment is, again, the curiosity. It's about asking, what do you need to feel happy at work? Or how happy are you at work at the moment on a scale of 1 to 10? And if they say a 4, okay, that's interesting. So what would be different if it was a 6? And that's when we start to identify the missing pieces that they need to fulfill, to be able to be more engaged, so trying to understand that little gap in what they would like to experience and what they're currently experiencing. That could be one way to approach it. Other questions could be like, what's really important to you in life, and starting to understand the person on a deeper level. So yeah, it goes back to the title. You only have to ask. It's about being curious and asking questions to get to know each other, to create that little bond between yourself as a leader and your employee.
Okay, I have a question. that I think it's going to be really important for the audience. But before we get to there, I'd like you to share a little bit how people can get to know more about you, how they can get a book or pre-order the book or sites, how people can get in touch with you, Anna.
Yeah, of course. So you can reach me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me. Send me a message. It's Anna Hislop, the way that it's written on the screen. And you'll find me as the employee engagement expert of Gen Z. That's how you'll find me on LinkedIn. You can also, of course, reach me through my website, which is unfoldingsuccess.com. It's linked on LinkedIn. And then when it comes to my book and getting access to that, it's on some of the biggest online bookshops, and it can be pre-ordered at the moment in the waiting of the release on the 22nd of July.
Excellent. Very nice. Thank you. So my question here is this. Is you're going to do this work on in a company or in a team area where things are not working well. Okay. So what is your approach to working with them? Or like, of course you're not going to do every single detail, but or like the macro steps or macro phases that you go through to increase engagement in an environment when it has a considerable percentage of Gen Z.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to start with creating this understanding, this mutual understanding of who Gen Z are as a cohort, as a group, what shaped them to be who they are, what they think is important in their life. And just as an example, diversity, equity, and inclusion and climate change and having a sustainable approach based on their education, that is a hygiene factor for them. That is not a nice extra. That is something that they expect to be a part of the business procedures. They just expect it. The same with technology, which is saving time and making processes better and quicker. That's also expected because they're so used to it. They're expecting good quality personal development training. This is the generation that grew up with TED Talks. The level of a TED Talk, it's really great quality, and it's the world's best researchers and other leaders who are sharing their knowledge. This is what this generation is used to. So adapting your onboarding, adapting your development opportunities and training opportunities to be fit for purpose. That's really important. So doing a little survey of what are you currently doing that Gen Z would consider to be good and positive, and what are you not doing? Where are you a bit behind in your business that Gen Z would react to? It's the same with the recruitment process, for example. How are you recruiting the right people to your business? What are the needs, and how well are you meeting the needs of Gen Z? Because they will sniff it out in the recruitment process. And the moment you start to overpromise and paint a picture that's not true, as soon as you start to do that, they will pick up on it and they will be disappointed. So it's about managing expectations there and being really clear and transparent. The other thing that's important to Gen Z is obviously the compensation and the reward that they are getting for the work that they put in. And with today's cost of living crisis, with inflation, with the massive student loan debts that this generation has, the cost of buying a house, we have to make sure that it's worth the effort that they will put in to work, that it's compensated in a fair way. And this generation is all about transparency as well. So they know what their colleagues make for a living. They know what the industry is paying. And if you're below that level, then you won't get their best work.
Wow, nice. I have a couple other questions, but before I get into that, I would like to know if if there's something that you would like to say, add, or I should have asked already that I have, because
Mhm.
hopefully I still have time for this. But
Mm.
from your end, what else would you like to share, or wanted to answer?
Yeah, well, it's just in a way a little summary. I think knowing what we now know about Gen Z, what shaped them and how they experience the workplace, it makes complete sense that they don't respond well to the traditional management style. It makes sense. And if we want to retain them, if we want to get the best out of them, we have to be willing to adapt and to change our way of leading to meet
Beautiful.
their needs. And it's exactly the same way that I had to adjust my teaching style back in the day, 2010. We have to change and adapt in leadership.
Nice, very nice. It all adds up. It gives more context and more texture of how
Mm.
we understand this.
And some of the things they're asking
Yeah.
for is really, really important. 6 out of 10 Gen Zs, they have experienced microaggressions or harassments in the last 12 months. That is a problem. And they're pointing
It
it
is.
out because what was used to be okay,
It's not.
office jokes, is not okay anymore. Um, and they're doing us a favor to point this out and to help us to change, to help us to have a better culture, to help us to take away some of this toxic behaviors that nobody was really enjoying, apart from the person maybe saying it. So seeing that they are actually pointing out things that needs to change for us all to have a better experience. So I'm super inspired, as you know, by this generation. I think they can really help us to change things for the better.
Excellent. I'll let you know that you just saw the book now. Somebody comment, I think was wrong, the comment. You just got the Kindle version of the book. You can't wait to have it. So awesome. Glad to hear
Excellent.
that. Hopefully more and more people will do
Thank
that.
you. Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you is, you probably have, like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of stories of transformational
Mm.
journeys on this. Do you have anything that you feel like sharing, like one or story or a scenario that was like moving or touching, that was, because what you're saying is just like, it seems to me that in the proper frame, the Gen Z in the work environment is a force for good,
Mm.
because not tolerate harassment, just asking for help and being clear, it's something that's important to everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
evolution of civilization, right?
Mm.
Stop
Mm.
harassing people, like, so this is a force of good. And I
Mm.
get really energized by this, right? I mean, if you have something to share about those lines, something, of course, don't need to say names or companies or anything, but
No,
something
of
that you
course
found that
not.
was
Yeah.
really, that was nice to watch or to support.
Yeah. One story is coming to mind as you asked this question, and it was in a big company, and there was a senior leadership team. They were asked to focus on projects that can future-proof their business, and it was all about coming up with new ideas. It was all about improving processes or thinking differently. And the leader who was initiating these projects, time after time, asked for updates. Come on, guys, what have you got? How are you progressing with this project and doing these improvements? And it was painful and it was slow moving, and there weren't anything really coming out of that question. So meeting after meeting, months after month went by without any real change or any real initiatives. And this leader got fed up with waiting, and he noticed that there were loads of opportunities for improvements, and particularly important improvements for the future. So he decided to pivot and to ask the graduates instead, saying, I have these 4 areas, these are the briefs. I would like some fresh ideas, some new thinking when it comes to how we can future-proof and find solutions for these real problems. My senior leadership team haven't yet been able to give it to me, so I'm asking you now. So he basically invited them to the table. He gave them some deadlines to when they needed to present, invited them all for lunch, got to know them, exchanged experiences and had some fun together, and waited to see these presentations. And I think he said that 2 out of the 4 projects were straight into going live after
Wow.
the graduates presented their ideas, because they were really good. And 2 of the other 4 projects had to undergo some more work and some more sign-offs to be able to do, but it was in the next 6 months of going live, So stepping away from that traditional way of doing things, expecting your senior leadership teams, who are already very busy and don't have time and don't feel the importance of an extra project being thrown into the mix, and instead directing it to this young generation of graduates who are hungry, who have fresh ideas, who would like to contribute to the bigger picture. And it was a huge success.
This is so beautiful. When you start talking about that, and you said that like 2 of the 4 went live like immediately, it's just like I have the whole body. I think even there, my hair was like this goosebump. It just because what we typically see here is like the opposite. Just people bashing the new generation, just bashing, destroying them because they're lazy and all that stuff. It's because they don't understand them. And we need to bring, it's just like my message is not for you, Anna, but for whoever is listening here. If you're on a board, if you're an executive, if you're a business owner, you gotta know the Gen Z. You gotta bring them on board. You gotta be patient. You gotta be flexible and adapt to them, because they are the future and the present, and we are missing out.
Yeah.
And this is for the greater good.
Yeah.
So,
and
Anna,
again,
really
they're used to it
this.
from their education system, and they're noticing that it's not the same at work, and they are disappointed, and it's unfortunately it's an expectation that they're not seeing fulfilled.
Wow, thank you so much, Anna, for this. This was really amazing. I had really high expectations for today's talk, but this is just blew out my mind. It was just so good. I'm really glad for people that interacted, and I hopefully we can bring your message to even more and more and more people, hundreds and maybe thousands and millions of people, because we know that every time we like touch a person, a leadership in a leadership role, this person can impact the surroundings. And that's what I believe, like at least one person, one company, one team at a time, we can definitely make a difference. So from the bottom of my heart, really thank you for your time, Anna.
Thank
Really
you. And the book is called You Only Have to Ask. And I'll just mention that again. It can be bought in many different places, but find your copy. And it's really easy to follow. You've read it, Carlos, haven't you? And it's not complicated.
No,
it's very basic
great.
handbook. Do this and you'll succeed.
Easy reading, enjoyable, and you have like models, and you have like building blocks. It's just like very easy to understand the process. So great book. Congratulations on that. Really thank you for this. Thanks, dear audience. Thanks, João, for being here. And we see very soon. We're going to have like a quick break, small couple weeks of vacation, then we're coming back. Anna, thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye now.